Hello, Marvelites! You're watching Marvel's The Pull List, and I'm Ryan, a.k.a. Agent Dan.
And I'm Tucker Marcus.
And every week, normally, we read all the new comics that come out, we pick a couple, we tell you why we're hyped for them. We're doing something different this week. We are celebrating Marvel's 80th anniversary all year long, so we're starting off with a bang. What are we doing, Tucker?
So we're starting at the beginning. We're looking at comics from the 1930s and 40s, some landmark issues, and we're starting with one that has a familiar name. This is Marvel Comics #1. It's really, really fun to dig back into these issues, knowing what era they were written in, but also seeing them through fresh eyes of 2019. This story has the Human Torch, unnamed here, but this is the Jim Hammond Human Torch. And then we have the Angel, who's kind of a hard-boiled cop figure, really 1930s style.
Like hard vigilante who definitely murders people.
Then we have Namor, the Submariner, which is always so fun to see the seeds of where it all began for him.
That story is gorgeous. The way that Bill Everett does colors, the way he draws the Submariner people. You could put that in a book today. It's like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. We have a Masked Raider story, which is really cool. As a big fan of Westerns, I love this kind of cowboy figure. It's so much fun to read. And then we also have a ka-zar story.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see what started here in 1939 and remains perennial to this day.
Marvel Comics editor-in-chief C.B. Cebulski and I talked about that issue in length for This Week in Marvel. Stay tuned for that. But I'm going to dive over to a book called AllWinners Comics, issue #1. It's got a bunch of stories similar to Marvel Comics #1. You've got the Human Torch. This is a little bit later. So by this point, Torch also has his own sidekick, Toro, who is also this flamed character. We've got the Angel, who is, again, he's just taking it to the bad guys. We've got Captain America and Bucky in their own story. This one is really great. Of course, you've got Jack Kirby art, and you get flourishes of the King Kirby we will come to know and love later. You can see it in there. My favorite part is when Cap and Bucky crank call Hitler. I was like, this is great. Why not? They should be doing this. It's real fun. There's a Namor story, which is just tremendous, as always. But coolest thing here is you get two very early Stan Lee stories. He writes a story featuring the Black Marvel, an early hero. He's, kind of generic, to be honest, but it's really cool because you get that taste of who Stan Lee will come to be in later years.
Speaking of this era, and speaking of Cap and Bucky specifically, my next issue is Captain America Comics #1. This is where it all started. We have this iconic cover here that has lasted throughout the years. What was so fascinating for me reading this issue was this feels so explosive. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby are just really kind of blowing up the form in a way. It feels so dynamic. There's so much energy in these panels. They're really doing stuff that feels so fresh and new. But of course, I love classic Steve and Bucky stories like this because it's so interesting to see the Mighty Marvel style introduced in these words. I mean, just the energy and the exclamations, it all started here, and we of course know it as like the signature of the House of Ideas to this day, but it's so fascinating to see just the work being done in the formative stages right here. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, it's real cool. My last one is called Marvel Mystery Comics. It's issue #8. Now, it's interesting because Marvel Mystery Comics was actually Marvel Comics. Changed the name of the series. This is my favorite of the group that we're talking about today because, yeah, it's got the Angel in it, it's got a bunch of different stories, but it has two stories in particular that I absolutely love. It's got a Namor the Submariner story by Bill Everett. It's got a Human Torch story by Carl Burgos, but they cross over. They're tied together, which is the first. This is really early in our history. Namor is trying to be okay with people, with humanity. He's kind of ornery, but they electrocute him. And so he's like, what up? He goes on a rampage. He goes to the Bronx Zoo, and he starts letting out all the animals. And it just causes chaos. So at one point, he lets out elephants. There's a woman who's pushing her kid, and she freaks out. The kid falls over. She leaves the child. Namor, who has been like, humanity, is like, wait, there's a baby here. The baby shouldn't get trampled. People are like, oh, maybe he's not so bad. He's like, oh, I'll show you. And then he goes and he destroys the George Washington Bridge. He is the best. The Human Torch story follows Namor. It's like Human Torch is trying to fix everything that Namor broke. It is really fun. All these books that we've talked about, you could read on Marvel Unlimited, and we're going to dig into these a little bit more, as well as a couple other issues on our podcast version of this, which you can check out wherever you get your podcasts. And then we'll be back with another episode next week. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Tucker.
And this is Marvel,
Your Universe.